Welcome to The Great Work of Your Life, an interview series produced by Revealing Genius. Our guest today helps CEOs, owners, and founders get clarity on where they want to go, who they need on their teams, and she ensures they're set up for success from a people and process perspective to achieve their goals. I can attest she is an expert at reinvention. We're going to talk about that today because she's reinvented herself several times over the course of her career and has even deliberately chosen to take some breaks. The bulk of her industry experience is in services where human capital is often the air quotes, the product. She opened new markets for a publicly listed company, designed winning teams at an independent digital agency, leveraging the power of digital nomads and remote teams before Zoom was our way of life. She's worked for startups, owner founders, SMBs, SMEs, and publicly traded firms all over the world, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Most recently, get this, she interviewed 600 candidates and selected more than 50 CEOs through acquisition in Europe, in North America, as part of an innovative private equity firm based on search words. Targeting succession issues in SME, she spoke to us her practice in the last 3 years on which skill set, leadership qualities, and personal drivers and derailers make a great new generation owners and leaders across a wide range of industries and sectors. She speaks 3 languages, French, German, English, and I came to know her through her board work, through this wonderful foundation called Blue Mind, where she's raising money for mental health. So please welcome Miss Marine Hamou.
Thank you very much, Mary, for the intro. Very, very happy to be here today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We have so much to talk about. I wish we had a couple hours. So we're going to try to condense it into a 20-minute time slot. Let's start with the first question. You have a lot of energy. So what gives you energy and what drains your energy?
All right. So what gives me energy? I think I'm very disciplined with my energy. Because as you know, like I have this nature where I'm very energetic, very dynamic, always on. And so I had to learn how to manage this as well, not to drain out my energy at the end of, the day, the week, the months, the year. And so basically, I sort of have pockets of time within my day where I do sports. I do sports every day. It doesn't have to be 2 hours in the gym. It can be just half an hour walk in the morning. That always, pumps up the energy, or at night. And basically, I'm also quite disciplined into like off time. So when I switch off, I don't have any devices. I sort of like, look at the horizon and dream. And I think that sort of levels out the energy that I give and sort of the energy that I, recharge my batteries. And
Yes.
what drains my energy, I have to say, is grumpiness. It's sort of like, I think that unfortunately there's a little bit of that at the moment. There's a lot of grumpiness. It's difficult. It's hard. And I think that always, like, I try to take as much distance as possible with it, but it sort of, it annoys me. So it drains a little bit of my energy because I'm like, you don't have to be so grumpy about things, right? And I think that these are the 2 things, like on one hand, how I gather energy, and on the other, how I sort of what drains my energy.
Yeah, the discipline I can attest to for sure. Which kind of leads to the next question. So your trajectory has had it's like a winding path that you've taken, and it's really quite amazing in terms of the work you've done. So what do you love the most about your work, and what do you like least about your work?
So I'm very fortunate today because I get to choose who I work with as a fractional, and I get to work with amazing investors and amazing entrepreneurs, right? So I think that what I like the most is to basically work with them directly and support them in growing and, realizing their dreams. I think that is definitely what I love the most. I think what I like the least is, obviously, as a fractional, you sort of first of all, you still have to explain what it is. What is a fractional? So I think that's part of what I like the least. And also, it's not that I don't like it, but it's sort of I'm a very curious and I'm a bit restless, right? So I think everything's interesting and so forth. And I sort of have to filter out what I focus my time on. And this is something I don't like. If I could work like 24 hours a day and like I would probably do, but I sort of have to make choices. And I think that's what I like the least.
Yes, and you and I have talked quite a bit about this 80-20 rule. It's you've taken sort of a different perspective on the Pareto principle. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How you coach entrepreneurs, you mentioned, to realize their dreams, because at the end of the day, there's that thread, at least I can see, kind of woven through everything you've done. It's all about helping people realize their dreams. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the 80-20 rule is something that I've applied to my professional life for about 4 years, a little bit more than 4 years, right? And it came after I was like drained after working 150% in the corporate world. And I was like, yeah, you need to take a step back and, you know, do things differently. Because I love work. I've always had very interesting things to do with interesting people. So, but how do you manage not to come, to a burnout stage where you're like, "Ugh, I don't have any breathing room anymore, right?" And I sort of thought about this. There's 80% of your time you exploit your skill set, what you do best, what you're good at, what people will, pay money for your time and would hire you if you're looking for a job, right? That's 80%. And then 20% of your time you spend it exploring. So it's exploitation, exploration. And it's something that when you think of it is manageable, right? You can manage 80%, 20%. If it was 50-50, it would be more complicated also from a financial standpoint, right? But 80%, 20% enables you to sort of really like in your head and in your calendars to block that time to explore something new. Maybe it's a new skill. Maybe you want to learn Spanish. Maybe like it can be anything. And to have that freedom to explore is empowering. And what I've realized after 4 years, so during that 20% time, I did a coaching class. I sort of involved myself more in nonprofit work. I did a lot of things that if I had not consciously sort of decided this 20% is like, it's me. I decide what I do with it. I don't expect to have a return on investment on it. It's just an investment in myself, right? And what I've realized after 4 years is that a lot of what I've spent time exploring during my 20% actually gives back to my exploitation. And this is, it's a virtuous circle because you sort of invest in yourself and that in itself invests into your, paid career, if I may say, right? Sort of that 80% where you exploit your skill and it's your main revenues and so forth. And I think that for a lot of people, especially who are in a phase of transitioning their career or thinking like, hey, like the aha question, like something needs to change, it's a very good approach because it's not as stressful as going like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur or I'm, like a radical change. It's something that you can implement relatively easy. Also, if you're employed, you can relatively, implement this in your lifestyle and sort of with talking to your boss or to the owner of the company that you work for to sort of say, hey, I just would like to have like maybe an afternoon or a day a week where I'm going to be exploring something new. And of course, like, I mean, in Europe, it becomes more and more common, which means that a lot of companies sort of even offer like you can work 80% or 100%, which means that for a lot of the people I sort of coached who were in a career transition didn't necessarily were cut for entrepreneurship. It was a great way for them to approach like this, hey, let me take some time to explore to uncover things about me and skills that I had never the opportunity to do. And maybe you discover something that you're really not good at, but you really enjoy. And that's also okay, right? So I think that this 80-20 rule is something that now I really live by. And I've fingers crossed, but so far managed to keep it for 4 years.
Brilliant. I absolutely love that 80-20 principle. And I think folks listening to this now can really resonate with that. And I'm wondering if that exploration time helped you to discern the great work of your life. Like, was there a point in time when you realized what the great work of your life would be?
Well, I sort of very early on in my, because, I've had several lives, like several careers, right? And I always talk about my career as not a career path, but a career portfolio. So I sort of acquired different skills, different experiences that make me who I am today. And, being able to help entrepreneurs on many different levels, right? And I sort of, instead of being ashamed of it because it's not your regular path, right? It's a pride, right? It's sort of the combination of experiences made me who I am today. I know it might be harder for some to sort of say, hey, I have this atypical profile. Nobody will hire me because I don't have this straightforward career path. But actually, if you own this, and you sort of it becomes so natural and you become so authentic with what you've done that most people realize what you can do for their business, not necessarily like you're going to fit this job description, but this is how you're going to help my business, my team move forward. And I think this is, for me, this is the great work of my life, right? Is to be in that position where I don't fit in a job description. And I mean, to be very honest, I think since 2010, all the jobs that I've had were just like there were no job description. It was just like, oh yeah, I think we need someone like you. Like, you just start and then we'll make it we'll make a job description as you start working with us. And this is not for everyone for sure, but this is something where I realized that the best jobs actually don't have a job description, right? You sort of have a really good fit um, you know, between a team and or an owner or, and then you help them grow the business. So I think that's more what I see as the great work of my life is to be able to support on many different levels. But sort of like, yeah, without a title in place, without a box where you have to fit in.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your LinkedIn profile because when you look through it, you are you very deliberately and almost unapologetically, you actually list, I took a 3-month break here and I learned how to speak Chinese. I took another 3-month break here and then I traveled. How many passports do you have, Marine?
So I have two passports officially, even though I'm half Indonesian, but unfortunately you can't have more than one passport if you have an Indonesian passport. So, until they change the law, I only have two, but hopefully one day they will change the law and I'll have three.
Amazing. So along the way, did you ever have any doubts or freak out moments about the great work of your life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like if you don't embrace this moments where it's, yeah, because you think that you don't fit in like the career path that everybody has, or like a job description. There are moments where you also panic. You're like, hey, like, am I going to be out of a job, or my CV is weird and so forth. So I think, yes, I've had definitely moments of doubts, moments of also like questioning like the choices that I made and where will this take me. And I think I'm quite authentic with my doubts and my vulnerability. And I think that people who never ask themselves questions or never, have no self-awareness, you usually, I mean, struggle on other things, right? But I think it's something that I've never tried to push away or I sort of, hey, this is that you're in a period of doubt, you need to question a number of things, and you're going to take the time to do that and do that well without becoming complacent with it, right? You sort of, yeah, it's a period, it's like that, you accept it, you have to live through it, that it will come to an end. And out of this time of reflection, you will, you know, the universe will show you a sign, but you will also go and look for these signs. So I think like for me, career breaks, and this is something weird because in recruitment right now, I find it weird if someone in their 30s has not taken a break to travel the world. I find it extremely suspicious. I'm like, are you not curious? Are you not daring? Are you not, you never wanted to take a risk? Like, and more and more recruiters that I talk to, they all say the same. It had like, it has become something where it's almost suspicious that you haven't at one point doubted yourself or wanted to try something new or failed. And I think that we slowly shifting from like, it needs to be like a straightforward career to like, what's your career portfolio? What are the skill sets that you collected along the way because you've met very different people, you've had very different experiences, you've put yourself in situations where you were at risk, right? Where it was uncomfortable. Because one of the key skills that you need to have today is how to deal with ambiguity. And the best way to learn how to deal with ambiguity is to put yourself in an ambiguous situation, right? And by traveling the world with a backpack, for sure, you're going to have many, 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 many ambiguous situations. So I think these are all things that now it used to be a stigma. And now it's almost something suspicious if there isn't that portion in the CV.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, this next question is I was thinking, in preparation for our call today, if I only could ask you one question, this is probably the one because you have such an amazing background. How do you define success?
Mm. Um, so personally, how I define success for myself, it has to do with my happiness. And that's what, matters the most. And what makes me happy is to do interesting things with interesting people and having the time for my loved ones. And that is sort of like, like this is the checkpoint where I'm like, hey, are you doing interesting things with interesting people? Yes. Do you have time that you can spend with your loved ones? Yes. And that sort of like completes and for me but that's very personal, right? And I think everybody has a different definition of what success is, and what is success for them. But you need to be very clear on that. And I sort of like, I worked in private equity. So, a lot of the time success is defined by monetary success, right? And that's absolutely fine. It's just not my definition of success. And from, from a career standpoint, I I think that if you do interesting things with interesting people, success, like financial success, will also come. So all in all, I think that it's a top priority for me, and it's definitely how I define success. But it doesn't mean that I totally ignore the financial aspect of it. It's just that I don't necessarily put it as a priority in terms of defining success.
Yeah, interesting things, interesting people, spending time with family. That's a good definition. Bravo, well done. If you had to do it all over again, would you do anything differently? What would it look like?
I probably, if I could do something differently, is I would have given me the courage to do something entrepreneurial earlier on in my career, to sort of start a company, or I think I was too scared out of university to sort of do that on my own, because I would have realized that I'm not necessarily cut for entrepreneurship, but I'm very much cut to help entrepreneurs. And I think that it took me a while to come to that realization. And if I could change one thing, it would be probably to sort of, yeah, have had the courage to start something. And I had, like at university, I was really thinking about it, but I just didn't have like, literally, I didn't have the courage at this point. So I think that's what I would change.
Yeah, you and I are kindred spirits there. If I could go back to my younger self and give her some advice, that would be it, is to have more confidence. Like take the self-doubt off the table. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. And you probably have had this experience too, where people around you had more confidence, in you than we had in ourselves, which, speaks volumes. So yeah, 100%. I think that's really good advice. How about your superpower? Where have you spent 10,000 hours honing your superpower? Because you're very passionate about that 80%, like, the exploitation of your skill set.
So I think my superpower is that while being super objective and rational, I can dissolve a conflict or a tension with cracking up a joke. And that is a superpower. Trust me. I've been in board meetings, I've been in shareholders meeting where that was not going well. And just by sort of like cracking up the right joke, you can't laugh about everything depending where you are, but it disarms the tension, and then you can, continue the conversation in a much better way. And I think that's my superpower. And
Yeah,
I'm not
levity.
sure I spend so much time honing the skills. I think like I have to ask my mom, was I born with it? like a like a comedian, but it's definitely something that has been extremely useful to sort of, move forward, help people move forward, is to take like let's take a minute to laugh about things, to just distance ourselves from the tension, from and you can do it very thoughtfully as well, right? So that the people don't get offended or anything, but it's definitely a superpower. Definitely a superpower.
Yeah, and I mean that is the game, right? Life is supposed to be fun, no matter how high the stakes are. I mean, how high we perceive the stakes to be, no matter what's on the table. Life is supposed to be fun, and I think that just by your very presence, you remind us of that. Is there anything you wish you were better at?
A million things I wish I was better at. So small disclaimer, I do not have a driver's license. I failed the test so many times that, the instructor sort of said, please never drive. Like, this is something everybody can do. I can learn Chinese in 6 months, but like drive a car, no way. So yeah, like that's one of the things. And then I'm a terrible swimmer. Despite my name, right? I should have a much better, so there's definitely a lot of things that, I wish I could have the skills. But I sort of accepted that, driving is not gonna be one of them. Swimming is also, I try, but I'm not gonna be really good at it. And I think it's also about embracing like your strengths and your weaknesses. And typically there are things that I'm not particularly good at, but I really enjoy. And so that's also okay.
And not having a driver's license certainly has not held you back. I mean, you visited
Oh
pretty
no.
much every
Yeah.
every every continent in the world. Really, sometimes
Yeah.
some multiple times. Which is fascinating. So we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about you being a third culture kid. I'd love to hear more about that in the context of what do you know about yourself to be absolutely true?
I think being a third culture kid, so I was born in one country, raised in another, mixed parents with two completely different heritage, right? I was I grew up in an all white school, and so I was always the odd one out anyways, right? So you sort of own it very early on to be different, and that's also okay. But as a third culture kid, you sort of tend to make friends with other people who are also third culture kid because we understand each other better. So that's definitely one thing that you recognize in a lot of third culture kid, is that they adapt very, very quickly. They sort of, yeah, they know how to make friends easily because because you sort of have to, right? So I think that definitely this mixed heritage is a part of my identity at work and outside of work. It also brings a lot, yeah, you have an openness to the world, right? You're not, some of the things that usually scare kids don't scare you because it's sort of like, yeah, what, we have to move 3 times in a year. Yeah, it's not four at least, right? So I think that you definitely demonstrate this ability to adapt to a new environment, to a new situation. And one of the great benefit of being a third culture kid and growing up the way I did is I feel at home anywhere. There's not this notion of like, I live in Switzerland now, I spend a lot of time in Switzerland, But like, you know, I'm in London or New York or Paris, and I feel at home. It's just like home is going to be where I am, and and it's not related to a geography or a house or, you know, something material. It really is where I am.
Yes. And when we first met, I remember you saying, I've reinvented myself probably over 7 times. And that's when you had me hooked. I mean, that's fascinating to me. Um, what would people be surprised to know about you, knowing that about you?
Um, so people who meet me now get, you know, like doing what I do and having the seriousness about building businesses, growing businesses. I think that I used to be a violinist. And very seriously, like, you know, music was a big part of my life. And that's definitely something whenever I say that, for me, it's so much part of my identity that I don't even mention it. But for a lot of people who meet me now, they're like, what do you mean you were a violinist? And it's like, yeah. My first life, I was a violinist.
I did not know that about you. Thank you for sharing. That's brilliant. We have two more questions and then a bonus question before we close out today. And these next two questions, we need your advice. So the first one is, what's a book that inspired you to behave or think differently?
So, I think one of the book that I read that sort of definitely influenced me also personally is How Do You Measure Your Life by Professor Christensen. Was fortunate to go to Harvard and attend the disruptive innovation course with Professor Christensen. And that book sort of, it was very inspiring because it's a very personal book. Well, he wrote a lot of business books, right? But this one is a lot more personal, but still stems from his, you know, his business theories around disruptive innovation. And I thought that that was a very inspiring book. And I always recommend it also to people who are like, yeah, so what should I read next? And this is a very good introduction to the world of Christensen and disruptive innovation, with being very personal as well.
Really, what a gift. Thank you. I'm going to put that on my reading list. I am a junkie and I have not read that one. I can't wait. Thank you. So last question before we pause, and then we'll go to a bonus question. So the last question is, what's your favorite quote or motto and why?
I have several, but I think the one that I live by is actually something my grandma told me when I was a little girl. And so I again, like, you know, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family or, you know, a wealthy environment. And she was a very hardworking woman. And she told me, if you work hard and you treat people with the same respect that you expect them to treat you, you can do anything you want. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I could have been told as a little girl, or that can any little girl in the world can be told by their mom, their grandma, their father, or their grandfather. Because it's true, right? There was the notion of meritocracy, if you work really hard, but then there was also this notion of being kind, being respectful towards others. And I think these are definitely words that I live by.
Beautiful. Thank you, Grandma. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it. I wish I could have met her. There's one quote I wanted to read to you. I went back through my notes in preparation for our call today. You said something that sort of personifies, Marine Hamou, and you said, "Mary, blank pages are terrifying, yet also full of possibilities." Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like, you know, we sort of scared of the unknown. We brought up being scared of the unknown, of what we don't know, something bad can happen. But actually, if you switch it the other way around, something really great can happen, right? And I think it's sort of like if you empower yourself to, you know, see the possibilities of something great happening rather than something scary, then a blank page having not, you know, nothing predefined for you is extraordinary. It's freeing, it's empowering, right? So I think definitely you just need to get over the sort of fear that's embedded in you of like fear of the unknown, and sort of embrace it and say, hey, actually I can draw on that blank page, whatever I want to do, what I want to be. And I think that's very empowering. It's scary, but it's very empowering as well.
Definitely. Love it. Excellent. Thank you so much. So I want to pause here for just a moment. Is there anything you'd like to add? Like, for example, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your nonprofit Blue Line before we go into the very last question.
Yeah, so Blue Mountain Foundation is an extraordinary project from Marie-Alice de Puter, who's the founder of this foundation that's based in Paris, but has mostly project in West Africa. And the idea is to sort of destigmatize mental health, more specifically focusing on French-speaking West African countries, because unfortunately, like I think mental health sort of is a taboo globally, right? In many different countries. But in West Africa, there's the language issue, because there's very, very little like innovative solution that have been put together in English a lot more, but in French, not so much. And then you also have obviously the cultural setup of, talking about mental health is really no go. And so Marie-Alix started a foundation, I think in 2020 or so, and we met in Harvard together. And she asked me very early on to help her as an entrepreneur, right? So she had like no clarity on, she was in a career transition. She was like, oh, what do I do? And then, I was like, hey, like what you really want to do is that you really want to have an impact. That's what matters. Don't look for a job, in communication or whatever, like try to make this happen. And basically we started working together, and I was like, hey, like you need to take it like you're really serious about this. I was like, every week I need to see an update on your presentation and everything. And so through that process, we sort of the idea of the foundation and the different projects that the foundation supports came to life. And so for me, this is really for two reasons. I obviously extremely close to that project. First of all, because I was there at the very beginning of the idea of potentially starting this foundation, right? It was a typical case of an amazing woman who had an amazing life and this idea, this purpose that she wanted to have, and didn't necessarily know how to go about it. And I think this is part of where my best work is I sort of like, hey, like bring clarity on what and how you make it happen, and then, push you to make it happen. And then also, I mean, the projects themselves are absolutely amazing. So one of the project is called Heal by Hair. And the idea, again, to start the conversation around mental health, especially towards women and young women, was to train hairdressers with first aid mental health courses to sort of know, and these are courses that are available. I think it's somebody in Australia who designed those courses. There's just like first aid to pass your driver's license, but for mental health. And basically, Heal by Hair sort of selects hairdressers who then benefit from this short 3 days course, and then empowers them to sort of add this practice to their hairdresser business. And so far, I mean, it started in Abidjan in Ivory Coast, and now it's in Cameroon, it's in Togo, it's in, and we've had coverage from the New York Times, from Vogue, from the BBC. So this is a project that has a lot of impact, of course, to women and the hairdresser themselves who become entrepreneur, right? Who have this pride of being able to offer more than just hair. But it also resonates a lot with people around the world, because it's something so simple, right? It's, you go to the hairdresser, you talk to your hairdresser already, right? What if that hairdresser actually is able to find the right words to talk to you about mental health? And this is the entry point of making mental health less of a taboo and more of a, yeah, it's depression exists. It's not the devil. It's, and then, following that, obviously, you can't just have like the topic of mental health being discussed and then identified, but you also need to have the entire healthcare system that follows. And this is, obviously a lot of projects of Blue Mind is also to train more psychiatrists, more psychologists in order, because today the numbers are, I think I can't remember, but in Togo, there's 8 psychiatrists for 1 million people. So it means that despite raising awareness, you still don't solve the problem of people having mental health issues and not being able to be treated. So I think that the foundation really looks at, on one hand, making mental health a topic that people can talk about, that is not taboo anymore. And on the other, also making sure that people can be treated, that patients can find a doctor and not, be left in limbo without any treatment. So that's a little bit what Fondation Blue Mind does. And again, like it's been an amazing journey for Maria-Lisa Boutin, the entrepreneur, and I sit on her board. It's my second term on the board, and it's beautiful to see how Blue Mind is growing. But nonprofit are tough, right? It's constantly about fundraising. It's constantly about, making sure that it's year on, you have more funds in order to fund more projects. And despite, I didn't know much about the nonprofit space, but I thought with all the, the results, also the impact that was measured and the results, it's still difficult. It's still something where, it's top of mind. Every board meeting, it's like fundraising, because it's so core. So yeah, definitely if you know anyone who's in the US interested to support mental health in West Africa, definitely please get in touch.
The Blue Mind Foundation, talk about disruptive innovation. How fabulous. I'm so glad that you have a seat on the board. You can help move them forward, because I know you will. So one more question, if we may, before we close out. It's the bonus question. It's our legacy question. And it goes like this. If a higher power would let you, and higher power is in air quotes, whatever that higher power is. If a higher power would let you do, be, have, see anything, and there are no limitations, what would you do?
I would like to be an astronaut. I would like to see the Earth. I would I would like to see the Earth from above.
No surprises there. You are the quintessential explorer of this world and other worlds. Definitely. I love it. Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Marine Hamou, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for such an inspiring dialogue.
Thank you so much, Mary, for having me. Thank you.